Shotguns are one of the most powerful weapon types in the whole of Cyberpunk 2077, and throughout this video you'll see just why. I looked at the best and worst aspects to all of them so you don't have to, before deciding which, on balance, is best. There's a lot to break down here, so let's get to it. Briefly though, the main build I used when testing these shotguns was of course comprised mostly of body and tech perks, with some reflexes thrown in. My cyberware was Chrome compressor based, save for the odd times I switched out for Sandevistan, and as a result I could afford a lot of armor and heals, as well as a movable force, which reduced my recoil, and Revulsor, which slows time at low health. It's not too important to assessing the shotguns, but something for you to bear in mind if wondering about certain aspects of gameplay differing compared to your own. Now, onto the guns. At the bottom then, by no means a terrible shotgun, just one whose mechanics don't gel quite as brilliantly with the changes in 2.0, Palica is the smart variant of the double-barreled Igla, and for a weapon supposed to do the aiming for us, it misses more often than I do, and that's saying something. Sending 9 smart projectiles into the air, which sometimes maybe could hit their targets, and when they do, it's devastating, explosive, chef's kiss, mwah, when it works. But my god, was this a pain. Bending behind cover, as smart weapons should, worked very occasionally, and I would have been far better off just firing immediately than having to wait on a targeting system which may or may not fail. It even says that in the description. Increased damage, but higher chance to miss. Is it worth the trade-off? Not really, when there's plenty of healthy alternatives. It's more frustrating than anything, but if you do want to give it a go, then the crafting spec can be bought from Rancho Coronado's weapon vendor. And right after the Palica is the game's other smart shotgun, for much the same reasons. The Zhuo can be crafted with a spec bought from the city centre, but if I were you, I'd maybe save your money and just get the Xing Chong at the end of the game. This one is in fact weaker than the Palica even, though at least it can hit targets more often than not. And the best thing about this one is the ability to lock to multiple targets at once, taking more advantage of the multiple projectiles, technically. Though overall it just feels like it's taking forever to down anyone compared to the manual equivalents. Modding, of course, is an option with this gun, as it was with the Palica, but here again is a reason smart guns are set a cut below the other moddable guns. The Neil mod is something I'll mention a lot in this video. It's very overpowered and translates to a guaranteed insta-kill, essentially, when shooting enemies in the leg. It's so powerful that it actually alters the course of this entire ranking, and even works with cyber junkies, though not quite max tac, which is probably for the best. Of course, we can line up leg shots with these smart guns by looking down, but when firing, all we do is shoot the floor. Kinda makes this mod a little useless here really, thus rendering this gun just kind of weak. And compared to what's coming up, this certainly isn't something I would choose to take. The Rostovich Igla may have been bottom of the list in 1.6, but the classic double-barrel shotgun does itself a little more justice nowadays. Spawning 3 different variants off of this, the Satara, Palica, and Testera, Igla does nothing miraculously special itself, but does fire both shots individually and with perfectly average range and power. According to the database, it was of course the weapon of choice for duck shooting, but by 2077 they are all apparently extinct. So much so that it even needs to describe what they are, likening them to seagulls, interestingly. And with the demise of our cute waddling friends, this canonically has faded into a weapon of the past, not even used much by poorer NC citizens on account of producing more noise than damage, apparently. My guess is that they never tried attaching a Neil mod, because again, it immediately goes from double-barreled semi-decent relic to knee-capping killing machine. Just a little bit of a pain to acquire, since the crafting spec isn't buyable, but rather dropped by Rufus McBride over here in Jackson Plains. You'll want to wait a while to do this scanner hustle for a legendary spec, or else just keep an eye out to hopefully get pre-built versions which have mod slots. If you're looking for a powerhouse shotgun with a ton of kick, then Carnage is a good place to start. Packing a ton of power behind each of the 4 shots it can hold, this can of course become a one-shotting gun for skull-level enemies on very hard, with again the simple addition of a Neil mod. Somewhat common spawns amongst weapon vendors since 2.1, and I found mine in Vista del Rey, same place as I acquired the crafting spec for this gun. This will of course take it from near insta-kill headshots to pretty much guaranteed insta-kill leg shots. That's not just at close quarters, but also worked from pretty far away. With each projectile giving a 25% chance to insta-kill with a leg shot, I suppose 10 of them would result in a 94.4% chance of success. Though of course that mod works much the same with any moddable shotgun. So what about Carnage's cons? Well, this one is slow. Slow to fire, slow to reload, and with just 4 shots before having to painstakingly reload each, one by one, I felt like I was spending half my time dashing off to reload this thing anytime I was faced by a group larger than 4 or bosses like MaxTac, on whom Neil doesn't seem to work. Probably for the best. Is it fun to down most foes in one? Yes, of course, but there are quicker ways of doing so. Unlocked as a reward for completing all of El Capitan's gigs, Bloody Maria offers a heap of unique bonuses, including increased dismemberment, bleed, and knockdown chances. And every time an enemy is dismembered, basically with every kill with this gun, our crit chance increases whilst reload speed decreases. And actually, reloading this in the heat of battle didn't feel as painstakingly slow as some of the other weapons. Basically, this is a tactician that's meant to pack more of a punch than normal, and it does, kind of. Shots generally send enemies flying, and it's a whole heap of fun, especially at a 5-star wanted level. Issue is, and this is a recurring thing, which I'm sure you'll be bored of by the end, one shot from this gun will often leave the enemy alive, prompting another and wasting time and ammo. Of course, a regular tactician with a Neil mod isn't faced with such a problem. See what I'm getting at? Yeah, it's fun, but technically less effective. First variant of the Pozhar shotgun is Alabai, part of the Tektronika weapon set alongside Leica, Volkadav, and others, and just like the rest, this one inflicts a burning effect which then deals crit damage to enemies anytime you shoot them thereafter. However, Alabai, in my opinion, is the best weapon of this set, as not only is it a powerful shotgun with good close quarters spread, but the Pozhar in general fires automatically, making it far easier to inflict this unique burn on as many enemies as possible, and the more enemies are on fire, the higher the crit damage will be. I'd say take it as a centerpiece to a Tektronika series build, but honestly, if it were me, I'd just use it about 90% of the time, merely switching out to the Burzhaya sniper whenever foes are too far away. To get this one, you can first find it at an airdrop atop a building over here in Longshore Stacks. It'll be completely uncontested, and also contain within a note from a factory worker in Warsaw, who's snuck it into this package and is begging for help, claiming to be imprisoned in a camp, forced to make weapons, and tortured. Their loved ones think they're dead, and this is all to the aid of Arasaka, who aren't even supposed to have factories in the still USSR-occupied region of the Cyberpunk timeline. The guy was imprisoned initially simply for owning books from the NUSA. The sad part of all this is that this game gives literally 0 options to help the poor man, and reading it all, right down to the location of Poland, I can't help but wonder whether this note is adapted from something real found during the 1930s. I'm fairly certain it's gotta be. Deep little moment there from whichever devs decided to put this in. But back to the Alabai, and whilst it is the best gun of the Tektronika series, it's not the best Pozhar. This title will of course be held by something onto which we can install a Neil mod, making for a fully automatic insta-kill weapon, which we'll come back to. When comparing the base shotgun models, the Tactician stands out as the standard pump action. Decent firepower, 1x1 based reload system, whilst at the same time having more ammo and better accuracy than Carnage. A more tactical model, if you will. Not quite as much chaotic charm, but better actual results. The Barghest variant does operate differently than the standard, bear in mind, with 10 rounds instead of 8, 10 projectiles instead of 6, and greater armor penetration, all at the cost of reduced range and handling. Personally, I'd take that one, especially since there's a better spread of projectiles for the Neil mod to do its work, which, as we've established, is probably the most OP mod in the entire game and exclusive to shotguns. The crafting spec for the Tactician can be bought from the weapon vendor at the stadium, though they're also pretty common in general. Again, waiting on that long reload can be a pain in the heat of combat, but loading up with 2 of these things at least can mitigate the frequency of that problem, especially if each enemy is just one shot. With Neil slapped on any moddable gun, it would bump it up several spots more, but honestly, I am expecting this ability to get patched or nerfed or whatever based on just how broken it is. So comment below if you're watching months down the line whether it still works. Whilst I scored it as number 1 back in 1.6, a full stat rework and general changes to the entire game rejig Mox to be fairly far down the list. The merits of before still ring true. This is a very light and steady shotgun, especially for a Carnage variant, with no immense kickback like the others will give you. Yet at the same time, close quarters hits will still more often than not result in a knockdown and sometimes even shock damage, all while scoring much higher on handling, and with 8 rounds before having to reload, it'll last you twice as long as the regular Carnage, though that does also mean taking about twice as long to reload. But the big problem I have with Mox now is that it is significantly weaker than many of the other guns, and where so many non-iconics now can kill easily with shots to the leg, that's many reasons less to go with this one. And if anything with Mox, you'll just run out of ammo quicker, having to lay in more shots, with most enemies surviving more than one, even if they do get knocked down. I did, however, find it pretty good for handling max tac. You'll just have to dart around a bit and whittle them down one by one. What's more, Mox is fairly straightforward to get. It just takes a while, and involves completing Judy's questline fully to the end of Pyramid Song, after which it'll spawn in her apartment to be retrieved at your leisure. The modifications turning it from a regular Carnage have even apparently been carried out by Judy herself, providing a little more sentimental value, though we never actually see her using the thing, which is strange. The Rostovich Testera, Serbian for saw I believe, is fittingly the name of the Cyberpunk equivalent to a sawn-off shotgun. With far more power behind it than Igla, this gun's base damage is utterly through the roof, though not quite as much as the iconic Dezerter, which we'll come to. As for the base variant, this is a gun which fires both its rounds at the same time, and whilst reloading is exceptional, it does take place after every single shot. And I know I'm bringing this up for every non-iconic, but Neil is probably an insta-kill either way, and there are faster guns than this for it. That said, a great strength for the Testera potentially is how it can serve in a Sandevistan-based shotgun build. Much as I believe shotguns now fare best on the whole amidst a chrome compressor build, check out this video to learn more, this is one of the few that can still work great with a Sandy, as reloading is something we can do quicker under time slow, and thus technically fire this gun a lot faster without having to wait between shots whilst the gun catches up. Much as Carnage is an explosive feeling gun with a powerful kick, Testera just feels like the superior version of that feeling, sending enemies utterly flying and having neither the need nor the ability to really properly aim. Just shoot in the general direction and it'll probably be fine. You can grab the crafting spec for this one from the weapon vendor in Northside. Sovereign. Now this is a double-barreled shotgun, and another great one to go with the Sandy, as it always has been. Sovereign is an iconic variant of the Igla, maintaining the more wooden design of the double barrel and firing both cartridges at once, prompting reloads after every hit. From first glance at the stats, it might actually appear definitively worse than the Igla, but it does do a few things to stand out from the crowd, and actually deal with crowds with relative effectiveness. Running up and firing from 2.5 meters will deal a guaranteed crit, as well as the potential to inflict burn and a hefty 75% armor penetration. On top of this, torso hits give a temporary buff to both player speed and reload speed, stacking 5 times up to 18 and 25% respectively, placing us into a mild state of fury as we carve our way through crowds. Again, Sandy works great here, as it essentially cuts down those reload speeds, but it's also great in the chrome compressor build I did, just like so many of the others. If you're a fan of the basic double barrel and just want insta-kills, then of course you won't beat the Igla with the Neil mod, but for those after a little more spice, or wanting to feel like a member of some British hunting society, this is one to pick up. Looted from the modern labour market suspected crime activity boss Shinobu Amai in Japantown. Pushing up to the top end of tactical shotguns, Crusher makes up for its loss in damage with a greater speed, range, and all-around handling than those heavier kicking models. It also reloads with a standard magazine, which circumvents the need to manually load each pellet. A disadvantage in real life where remaining mag ammo doesn't carry through to the next one, but it's far more speedy in-game. Operating closer to the likes of the Kyubi AR, one could argue. The Barghest variant offers even better range at the expense of a smaller mag, and shots with fewer projectiles. Tough to weigh up which is quite better of the two here, but I'd say the regular one in closer quarters, bigger fights, and Barghest when firing from further away. Again, the damage reduction compared to other guns is meaningless once we slap on a Neil mod, and Crush's superior handling and range makes it even better for those insta-kill leg shots than the heavier variants with more kick. Is it the best base model overall? Not quite, in my opinion, though it may just be the most accurate on the whole, and this could very well be packed in with a more tactical AR build to deal out some final finishing kill shots. After all, shotgun perks don't need speccing into nearly as much when we have the Neil mod. A tactical shotgun that can insta-kill with shots to the knees is good. One might even argue better than what's in store here. But I'm gonna have to rank this variant higher. Amstaff was one of the prime gaming award guns, and is now simply available randomly in airdrops around Dogtown. Basically, a more damaging Barghest variant of the Crusher, but the red spray has got to make it the nicest looking variant of this gun for starters. Also, it has a self-perpetuating ability which ties together kills and movement speed. Each kill increases speed by 4%, up to a total of 20, with faster speed granting more damage, up to 25% more. Nothing huge, arguably, but I found that extra speed to be genuinely really helpful in close quarters combat to get to cover and reload or regen. And getting rid of max tack with this one on very hard was surprisingly easy, provided you stay on your feet. Though granted, I do have all those reflex damage mitigation perks tied with moving around. Of course, it's only because of the steadiness of this gun is such a tactic viable, so that's another plus to the Crusher all round. But yeah, best looking and arguably best performing of the Crushers this one, proving you don't need the Neil mod to dominate the battlefield and feel tanky. By far the longest range manual shotgun now, the Headsman is a modified Tactician that fires just a singular slug rather than multiple pellets. This of course means being a lot more careful with your aim, but does allow us to reap the benefits of using shotguns from further away. Reloading is generally easier from this distance as we can probably take cover, and whilst I wouldn't necessarily use this one on its own, I would definitely take it in a full shotgun build as a ranged backup, picking off those further away whilst using something else to deal with the central crowd. It's about as tactical as you can get, more so than Mox even, but does lose the badass knockdown kick which comes with most shotguns, and is overall a bit weaker. Less of a splash damage gun, and much more demanding with precision. Though fortunately, there's a decent enough built-in scope to aid with this. Additionally, headshots will increase reload speed, and ammo capacity is reduced from 8 down to just 6. Again, less of a problem, since you shouldn't be under as much pressure when reloading. It sets itself apart a lot from most of the other shotguns, and it's for that reason that it's this high up the list. A ranged outlier to be paired alongside others, the crafting spec for which is looted off of the mech at the suspected crime up in Norfolk. The easiest to acquire variants of Carnage next, we have Guts, Rebecca's shotgun from Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and buffed up a few spots for that sentimental fact alone. Head to the city centre here, up to the top and behind these 3 monks, and Guts will be lying in the bushes around where it last would have been. It's totally free to acquire as soon as you come here, so absolutely get it. It's speedier than Carnage with better range and holds 6 shots instead of 4, which believe me makes a huge difference. Lack of a Neil mod is obviously a downer, but so is literally any enemy that gets hit with this. Not necessarily dead, just sent flying backwards. Same as us with this thing's insane kickback though. It's chaotic like Rebecca, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Guts is not a reliable companion, it's a hot mess to use. But rest assured, it will always come through when you need, and I much prefer it over the regular Carnage, both for its looks, the fact I don't feel I'm constantly reloading, and of course the ability to jump higher than we otherwise ever could when necessary. Yes, the Guts super jump still works in 2.1. With a combo of fortified ankles, looking at the ground, holding space, then hip firing just after we jump, you'll be propelled about 50% higher than otherwise. Not as useful for parkour I'd say as air dashing around with reinforced tendons on the whole, but there may still be the odd occasion where it is useful, so there you go. Otherwise, just enjoy the color scheme, kick, and all-round extra level of carnage that comes when you decide to use this gun. It's insanity in the best possible way, and only gets faster, more damaging, and more chaotic the more enemies we take out in a row. Much as I was critical about smart guns at the start of this video, this is the one exception for smart shotguns. An awesome endgame or post-game piece of kit that's basically a rocket launcher, or a gun that rains down a hellfire of napalm and is especially effective against groups of foes, firing 2 rounds at once, each containing 4 explosive projectiles. It's clear, since 2.0 at least, why this was the gun belonging to Adam Smasher. In fact, as of 2.1, we ourselves are even subjected to this kind of explosive attack, something you'll have to face before even experiencing the gun, as it is of course looted from the locked room of the Ebonike, which can only be accessed via a keycard obtained from the Sun, Star, or Don't Fear the Reaper ending paths. But just because you have to complete an ending to get it, doesn't mean there isn't a hell of a lot of game left to enjoy with it if you do that early enough. It can target up to 6 enemies and actually deals decent damage to all of them, as opposed to getting spread too thin. And at below a quarter health, the gun even aids in your staying alive, reducing reload by 40%, which takes place after each shot, increasing crit chance by 50%, applying more burn, and reducing our damage taken by a whole 45%. No wonder Smasher is so OP when he has access to toys like this. It certainly is a very specific choice of shotgun, nothing like the others at all, kind of like the 05 is for snipers, but then again, just like Headsman, it's these outliers that offer unique benefits, which are boosted above the fairly samey rest. Absolutely crucial for a Smasher build, or anybody who just wants to be as explosive as they possibly can. Perfect with a chrome compressor, of course, but I might also try it out sometime with a Raven micro-cyber contagion build. It is, after all, a smart weapon, so tied to intelligence, and the fire damage alongside contagion is going to be utterly devastating. This next one is crazy. If the regular Testera is the epitome of explosive feeling gun, actually that's the Xing Chong now, but anyway, I'm still going with this analogy, the Dezerter variant feels like holding a nuke that destroys everyone in the area when fired, including the bearer. And the biggest caveat to this gun is it's certainly not appropriate to be used in a weaker, less regenerative build, what with it setting you on fire. Fortunately, I don't think many optimized shotgun builds exist that don't spec heavy into high health, and that burn effect, whilst draining some of it, does offer benefits too. But first, how to get this one. You'll want to complete the Man Who Killed Jason Foreman gig in Dogtown, accepting Leon Rinder's deal at the end before looting this from his garage. I delve into the morality of that decision in chapter 5 of this video, and wielding this gun, it becomes all too clear just how terrible the massacre at Longshore Stacks must have been. Dezerter packs the heaviest singular punch out of all the shotguns, and is possibly the game's most powerful piece of kit from a certain point of view. This thing burns, dismembers, and grants bonus movement speed and damage mitigation to the user when they're set on fire. So actually, in big battles, you may wind up taking less damage when burning overall. My favorite way to use it is just to push forward, firing through a group, and not looking back until the end, then going back through repeatedly until the job is finished. It's not as quick at dispatching max tac as the Byakko Katana say, but still does complete that job effectively too. Essentially, don't mind the burning, and this gun is great for those who are okay with reloading after every shot. And even though it won't always down enemies in one, like a Testera with Neil could, Dezerter is still well worth using for all the positive fire effects alone, and is on the whole still better, I'd say, than its base counterpart. Whilst Brick evidently wasn't able to maintain order amongst the ranks of Maelstrom, getting overthrown by Royce at the start of the game, maybe that comes down to the fact that he lost his Satara variant shotgun named Order. Paraded in front of us by Herald the first time we enter the stadium, this one has to be bought, and set me back a full 120k. Hefty, but potentially worth it, given the gun's ability to charge up 3 times higher than a regular Satara, though this does take 3 seconds as opposed to 1, and inflicts a mental amount of EMP damage with a lot of satisfying blue numbers flashing up on screen. The barbed wire around the electromagnets too make it feel like something out of Mob of the Dead, and much as Brick seems like an actual decent member of Maelstrom, seeing his gun makes me a little more wary. Another thing you can do, if not shooting through cover, with the right tech perks is a bolt shot, releasing a flurry of yellow numbers on top of the blue and generally screaming obliterate it. If it weren't for the Neil exploit, then this would probably be the most powerful shotgun in the game, overall, when charged. Slightly more tactful than Dezerter, 3-second charges after all take longer to get off than just going around as a self-immolating demon, but the ability to actually vaporize foes like this is just total brilliant insanity, and an absolute must for those who want to spice things up from the base brilliance of the Satara. Without the Neil mod, this would sit above that version, but as things stand, there's another 2 entries. This video was really tough to pick a gun for top spots. So many different considerations to weigh, a frickin' weapon mod being far more powerful than it ought to be, and constantly trying to weigh it all between a balance of power and fun to use. This, I think, strikes that balance, but lacks one little thing, placing it in second. The VST-37 Pozhar is not the strongest gun on paper, indeed it favours firing automatically over a particularly high base damage, but as I've said multiple times, when leg shots are insta-kills, damage doesn't matter too much. And not only that, but it's fun to fire this thing. It still sends people flying whilst firing quickly, and has a speedy magazine reload too. The spec can be bought over in Northside, but for Phantom Liberty owners who want the absolute pinnacle of this weapon, come up to this building just outside Longshore Stacks during the nighttime and enter through this door into a party. At the end of the room, we can find the XMOD2 variant, which in addition to looking far more snazzy and doing more damage, also reloads noticeably quicker, and fires a more uniform 6 projectiles, less likely to go between legs when using Neil, and securing more of those insta-kills. It's just better in every way, and it's free, and it's iconic and upgradable. The only iconic, in fact, which can be modded with this game-breaking ability. Basically, it's for going around and sweeping up most everyone. There could be instances to bring out alternatives like the Headsman when at range, or Xing Chong when a very large group isn't too far off, but for the most part, when doing standard shotgunning, the Pozhar with a Neil mod is almost unbeatable. Almost. So what's better than a shotgun that can be modded in a way to allow all leg shots to regular enemies to become instant kills? Well, I'd say it's a shotgun that can still do that, but then can also fire through solid walls as well. Satara, of course, is the tech shotgun of Cyberpunk, an Igla modified to shoot electromagnetic spikes one at a time from its chambers. With this one, ladies and gentlemen, you need only imagine where the enemy's legs are going to be, charge fire, and watch them fall. No need to move to strategic positions, and it even deals a fair punch in shots against MaxTac, who aside from Mantis wielders will generally fight you from behind cover as well. It also doesn't require aiming and can be just charged from the hip, which I would recommend as the crosshair is easier to be accurate with in my opinion. You can also hold shots ready provided you have the in charge perk and wait for the opportune moments. And yeah, that's about it. A practically insta-killing device which ignores all cover. It's also best, I found, at dealing with the guys in the laser mech suits who can really mess up your day with a stray shot, since we can now also put walls between us and them and still take them out. And overall, it's just remarkable how much difference tech capabilities can make to the experience of using a shotgun. And the crafting spec for this one can be acquired at the weapon vendor over in Vista del Rey. No XMOD2 variants, unfortunately, but a man can dream that CDPR may add the odd miniature touch in future micro updates. Of course, this list is my opinion, as always, and if you've reached different conclusions on which is best, then I'd love to hear about them in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm hoping to hit 100k before finishing these weapon rankings, but we'll see. Massive love to all the patrons for keeping the channel alive all this time. Their names are of course on screen now. I'm Bram, and I'll see you in the next one.